And welcome back to Crosstalk, where we're talking today about biometrics and your freedom. And your body is your ID. Kind of an interesting and bizarre thought today as we think about where we are being seen. It was about 15 years ago. I was sitting in this studio doing an interview with someone about something new that was happening in Milwaukee. There were spun aluminum poles being erected in various intersections, and the poles just kind of sat there for a while, and then the housings. Today, of course, they don't need those heavy-duty housings, but those housings with a little windshield wiper on them, and it was a TV camera. And so we did a little probing. Nobody was talking about it, even in the media here. But we contacted the city development and found out that this was an ongoing thing, and it would be seeing more and more of these cameras. And today, of course, we're being watched wherever we go. If I go to McDonald's and pull up to buy a hamburger, the thing that stares me in the face just 2.5 feet away from me as I'm in the drive-through is a camera taking my picture. I don't know what the hamburger business would be in for taking my picture, but at any rate, those are the things that happen as we see these eyes in the sky or eyes in the ceiling of a building or in strange places where suddenly a camera, and cameras, ladies and gentlemen, can be so small that they can actually occupy a button on your shirt, a very small object, and to take clear pictures. But I tell you, Mark, you were talking about the sharpness of and the high tech of this type of facial recognition. Give us some more on that.
Well, it's not just the cameras, but you are absolutely right about the cameras. There are also now what is called handheld biometric devices. And these are essentially, if you think of the old cameras we used to carry with 35 millimeter film,
sure,
they're about the same size. And these handheld biometric devices can capture your facial image and again link wirelessly to databases, determine your identity. And it's not just cameras with facial recognition. We also have cameras, infrared, that are used for what we call automatic license plate reading, where the officer is able to scan your license plate and determine whether or not you have insurance, which some people don't object to, and it raises revenue for states. But it also links to criminal databases, if that's what the state wants to do. And then it will determine if somebody has a warrant out for their arrest. And it could be something as simple as an unpaid traffic ticket or a failure to appear for a traffic ticket, whatever. The point is, everywhere we turn today, the government is there. And what I want people to really understand, especially Christians, is this specifically relates, this entire issue, to biblical prophecy and what we read in Revelation.
Well, you know, how do citizens deal with it? How do you fight back on this?
Well, that's our job, and of course we ask that citizens work with us. The Constitutional Alliance is a group that is made up of about 35 state and national organizations as well as private citizens. Now, there are groups that are privacy advocacy groups, groups like EFF and EPIC, Electronic Privacy Information Center, and they focus simply on the privacy issue. What we do is we look at not just your privacy, if you will, rights, and most people think that privacy is a right. Actually, it's not included in the Fourth Amendment at all. But you do have an expectation. When you're out in public, we understand that people can take photographs of us. Okay, so we don't have that kind of privacy. But there's a big difference between privacy and anonymity. The Supreme Court's looked at this issue in a case called Hibble. And in that case, what was decided is this. Unless law enforcement has a reasonable suspicion, an articulable, if there is such a word, case that can be made why an officer was suspicious, then a person cannot be approached and asked simply to provide their name or identification documents. There has to be a basis, if you will, for the officer questioning the person. So we are starting to blur the line here when it comes to anonymity. Donald Kerr, who's an intelligence officer for the United States government, made the statement a couple of years ago, in these times, privacy can no longer mean anonymity. Well, we take exception to that, and we've argued it successfully, that yes, we are entitled to our anonymity, and in these times, we would make somebody believe that either the day before 9/11 or the day of 9/11 or after, that our Constitution had changed. And in fact, our Constitution has not changed. So when people start talking about in these times, and they justify that to do certain things, if they're not constitutionally permissible, then either amend the Constitution or don't do them.
Well, now, you've written the book, and it's called Biometrics and Your Freedom. Your Body is Your I.D., Biometrics and Your Freedom.
Yeah.
And where can people get the book?
Well, they can go to constitutionalalliance.org. And there's an icon there. You get a book, a DVD. It's a 501, not-for-profit. There's no tax here or shipping and handling. For $20, you get the book and the DVD. And what we want Americans to please appreciate, there's not another group in the or organization in the country that does the work that we do, which is why so many state and national groups work with us. As I go state to state with proposed legislation, and I testify, I do that under another organization that we have that is not a 501 called the Stop Real ID Coalition. The Real ID Act was passed in 2005 and signed into law by President Bush. It was supposed to be implemented in December 2009. It was put off till April 2011. The reason the government delayed the implementation is 25 states, either through law or resolution now, have decided that their states will not participate in Real ID. Now, here comes the key to Christians. Within the Real ID Act itself, it is required that a digital facial image be captured of each person applying for a driver's license. Now, I understand the need for photos on driver's licenses, but there is a big difference between a high-resolution facial recognition compatible photograph and the photographs that we normally think of. And the standard under Real ID for that digital facial image photograph comes directly from the ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization, an agency of the United Nations. The Real ID Act itself was in part drafted by another international organization that deals with identification documents. So what we have is the influence of two international organizations on U.S. law. But why this is important, critical to Christians, is if you look at Revelation 13:16, it talks about a system that applies to all people, rich and poor. Well, this system of identification and financial control, it's not just Real ID. It applies to passports, identification documents in other countries, to the point the same company that makes the driver's licenses in the United States makes identification cards for countries like India all over the world. They just signed an agreement with the World Bank that all underdeveloped nation, third world countries, would be also enrolled into this global system of identification. Now, Robert Mockney, who is an official at the Department of Homeland Security, made the quote, "Information sharing is appropriate around the world." And DHS plans to create a global security envelope of internationally shared biometric data that would permanently link individuals with biometric ID, personal information held by governments and corporations. So what you have is corporations and government obtaining any and all information about citizens using a global or international standard. And this is exactly what Revelation 13:16 goes into. Of course, 13:17 deals with your ability to buy, sell, travel. And we know in our society and around the world, without identification documents, you can't open up bank accounts, you can't do financial transactions, and under Real ID, you wouldn't be able to get on a commercial airliner and more. So this is Scripture, biblical prophecy being fulfilled today. Now, I could tell you, as a person who does many church services every month, meets with pastors all over the country, as I have laid this out to many Christians, many organizations, especially ones involved in biblical prophecy, they look at it, they challenge what I say. I don't say anything that I can't corroborate. And when I get done, I will tell you their hair stands up on the back of their neck. And part of the reason for that, if you look at Revelation 13:18, and we start talking about the mark of the beast, and I don't want people to be confused. This enrollment process is just that. It is not the mark of the beast. But there is a company in California called Somark Technology Innovations. Somark, S-O-M-A-R-K. This company has developed a tattoo. It comes in both invisible and visible ink. And in the ink of the tattoo, information is stored. It's been used for many years on animals, and now the Department of Defense, our military, has an interest in this application. So when you look at this and you say, now wait a minute, this is really starting to sound like the mark of the beast. What we want everyone, including Christians, to understand, as databases get linked and they get compromised, there's no argument about that. Eventually, as we centralize more and more information and these databases get compromised, the identification process will move from the identification document directly to the individual. And now you can see a clear way, based on fact, not speculation, that what we see in Scripture will actually be fulfilled.
We're going to open our phone lines here because I know many of you would like to ask questions, and it is a sobering fact as we hear this information and as we see the advancement in technology, and here in our own television equipment that we work with, recognizing that high-definition images are available. We talk about the drones that are up above, might be 5,000 or 10,000 feet in the air, but are able to read in high definition the faces or even the license plates on vehicles. This summer we had an interesting thing. Some of the kids at camp, we were talking about the fact of information and how the world is kind of along the same lines we're talking here. And we talked about some of the drones, and then as I was looking at the images taken from space, I shocked them all as I brought into view the image of Trail Ridge Ranch from a photograph out there on the satellites. We shall return in a moment, and our telephone number is 800-733-9829, 800-733-9829. Our guest today, Mark Lerner, author of Your Body is Your I.D., a new book out this week.
Pastor Larry DeBryan had many opportunities to take his church into the purpose-driven fold, but resisted mightily on solid biblical grounds. He documents them in his book, Church on the Rise, Why I Am Not a Purpose-Driven Pastor. Pastor DeBryan states that the evangelical movement is being leavened by prominent pastors whose immoral and private behavior belie their public profession, by unorthodox and unbiblical teachings that are promoted by parachurch ministries and conferences, by pragmatism, and by musical experiences which cater to the fleshly impulses of Christians. To obtain your copy of the 275-page book, Church on the Rise, Why I Am Not a Purpose-Driven Pastor, send a donation of $15 or more to VCY America, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. To donate by phone, call 1-800-729-9829. Ask for the book, Church on the Rise. Again, that number toll-free, 1-800-729-9829.